All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this latest installment of Luna's live webinar series, Budtenders Test their taste buds, and the question, will hydrocarbon reign supreme? So my name is Joe Goodman. I'm the Sales Engineering Director here at Luna Technologies. Joining us today are co-founders Jack Nato and Kyler Buck, as well as Adam Hain with technical sales. And we're featuring special guests, Alan, Zach, and John, both budtenders and intake managers from the CDC dispensary. So today's webinar will be a battle royale between the three main extraction methods: ethanol, BHO, hydrocarbon, and CO2. So obviously we know that extracts in general already represent about 25% of retail sales in mature cannabis markets today. Hydrocarbon, as an example, is uniquely suited to produce a wide range of products. But the question here today is, does it really make a difference to the consumer will notice? So we'll put these products to the test. We'll kick off the video here in a minute. Wanted to break down what we'll be covering after. So we're going to be looking at shelf space as a percentage of overall concentrates in an example market. We took Denver as an example. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be going over boiling points and maintaining the integrity of a flower strain. We'll talk about what is true full spectrum and the entourage effect. And we'll also cover safety around these methods as well. And then just talk about the diversity in product lines achieved with each method. So both Kyler and Jack will stick around after the webinar portion to do a Q&A section to end things for the day. And, myths will be busted and extraction champion will be crowned. So I've posted links in the chatting area with our contact information, website, as well as ways to follow us on social if you're interested. And a recording will be made available to everyone here today via email as well. So let's kick things off with our guests from the CDC dispensary as we go to the video and a blind budtender taste test. All right, thanks again for joining us, guys. We are here today for a blind budtender taste test with Alan, Zach, and John, all from the CDC dispensary. These guys are both budtenders and intake managers, so they're all pretty familiar with sampling and viewing products of all kinds. Today we're going to have three sample types, S1, labeled S2, and labeled S3. All different solvent methods, and these guys are going to hit it for the first sample. Perfect. Thank you, guys. So we want to get kind of your thoughts, and we're going to grab these back from you and load the next sample. But we want to get your thoughts around taste, just kind of how it made you feel, and yeah.
Tastes very clean. I like the pine hint to it.
Okay.
Smooth going down. Doesn't burn the nose on the exhale for me either. I enjoyed it.
Cool.
Yeah, very tasty, very piney. A little bit harsher for me, but I still got through it. It wasn't terribly coffee, so it wasn't terribly harsh, but a little bit on the back of the throat.
Definitely piney, just a little earthy, I would say, too. Smooth, tasty.
Cool. Awesome. Guys, catch us on the next take here. Guys, here we are with sample number 2. You guys ready? Hit it.
I think that one was a lot smoother than the first one.
A lot smoother. Yeah, tell us what you thought. Adam, do you want to grab the other samples here back?
Definitely right. I want to say that.
Here's
CO2. Yeah.
Man, that's definitely the taste of something really weird. But you remember I don't know, that's a different taste.
You say this one's weird taste?
It's a different, yeah, I can't put my finger on what it is.
I want to say it's actually my 2 carts I hit. I want to.
Kind of like that.
And
I think it's got a
this
bigger
one you
hit.
think tastes like your CO2 cartridge?
Like a CO2 cart that I'd be hitting.
Okay.
Okay.
And then,
But I haven't
That one seemed to me like a lot more flavorful than the first one.
okay.
So more flavor on that.
Okay. I thought the first one had more flavor. That one was smoother.
I agree with the
Taste
first
of the better
one, more
one.
flavor.
First a better one.
So it is good to know. So on flavor, do you believe this one was better or the first one was better?
I want to say the first one.
Like the first one as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing.
So
But Alan, you said that this tasted similar to a CO2 cart that you had.
Yeah, that one, because I was kind of curious, because I haven't dabbed a whole lot of, was it the hexane or the ethanol? I haven't dabbed much of that, so I was curious to see if I could tell the difference between the two. And surprisingly, I was kind of thinking the first one was CO2, but after hitting that one, I'm beginning to think that was the CO2.
Okay.
One thing to remember though too is CO2 cartridges, even though they're CO2, they've been winterized with ethanol. So you got to think about that when you're comparing. And you guys are dabbing ethanol dabs right now and CO2 dabs right now, which generally aren't available on the market because they're definitely less common than traditionally like hydrocarbon dabs. But cool. So,
Perfect. Thanks, guys. We'll move to sample number 3. All right, guys, here we are with sample number 3. Let's hit it.
Catch up.
It's tasty. Really tasty. Not harsh at all.
The best tasting
Really
one out of the
smooth, yeah.
bunch, for sure.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit how it compared.
Yeah, it's not working.
I want to say it tastes a lot more like the weed.
Is it heating up right now?
Yep.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't mind on it.
It reminds me of Fruit Stripes gum. Like the flavoring, Fruit Stripes gum.
A little bit. Without the hit of the
Fruitiness to it, a little bit,
Mixed
yeah.
in it.
A little bit of menthol on it.
Very nice.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Very fruity for sure, yeah.
Worth the wait.
Yeah, this is very tasty.
I'm doing this again for sure. Yeah, make sure you've taken enough hits to get an accurate
Yeah, so tell us what you thought of this one. We've been hearing a lot more vocal about the flavor on this one.
There was a lot more flavor to it than the first two, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Smoother, less harsh. I didn't even feel that on the back of the throat whatsoever. My teeth do feel like a little bit of something on that, but I don't know if that's just because I took a bigger hit of this one than the other two because it was smoother.
Yeah, fruity, tasty,
So you're enjoying this one
very
more.
smooth.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is going to be
How about
my
the
favorite.
experience? Like, do you feel, out of the 3, did you notice a different high or
I actually feel a
experience?
little different head change from this last one.
I feel very mellow with the extremities, very relaxed, chill.
Okay.
Very good.
So would you say that as well as flavor, this one, number 3, is the most effective as
I
well
would say
too
this
as the experience?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's one we all double hit.
Yeah.
Very euphoric, more so in this third one than the first two.
So if you guys had to guess,
CBD, relaxed euphoric is what I'm meaning.
yeah, so obviously we tested 3 solvent methods today. We did CO2, ethanol, and BHO. out of these three, if you guys had to label 1, 2, or 3, which one's which?
Oh man, I know what my head wants to go to, but it's probably wrong. I think 1 was ethanol, 2 was CO2, and 3 was the BHO method. But
Okay, cool. Thanks, Zach. What about you, Alan?
I'm seconding that.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, I would say the same. The first two would be confusing to me, A or B, but the third one, I think this is the BHO. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, you guys were right. Number 3, which seems to be unanimously your favorite to dab, was the BHO dab. Number 1 was the CO2, and number 2 was the ethanol. But you brought up that the cartridge, the ethanol dab, kind of gave you that same CO2 flavor and taste.
Yes, that is
and that makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to tell you why. And it's got to do with the terpenes and the boiling points. So number 3, the BHO was your favorite. That was because it had the most terpenes in it. If you go and look at the test scores, it actually had 9% terpenes compared to both the CO2 and the ethanol that had right around 3% terpenes. And the reason for that being is butane, which is so volatile, it turns into a gas at room temperature. Terpenes are volatile too. So since terpenes are, volatile gas too, and butane is even more volatile, you could actually pull all of the solvent out of the oil before you pull the terpenes out. With ethanol, the boiling points of ethanol is so similar to terpenes that to pull all of the solvent out of the oil, you're actually pulling and stripping a lot of the terpenes out as well, which is what makes it all taste the same, which is why CO2 vape pens kind of all have that similar vape, CO2 vape taste. And same with alcohol dabs, ethanol dabs, because all of that, what makes it unique, has been stripped away by introducing the ethanol and pulling out a lot of those terpenes that make your dabs unique and the experience different.
I got with my intuition on that because I said the first one is better than the second one. You should have known that could have meant the ethanol was in there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been crazy to me how sure I was after that second dab, though, because it tastes exactly like a CO2 carb to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing how similar the first two were, even with the breakdown on the test results. But BHO, as far as the test results are concerned, way outweighed on terpene levels, everything we were going after for a finished product.
Hands down, absolutely.
Well, and then the cannabinoids level too. It's also, that was CO2 straight out of the CO2 extractor. Was ethanol straight out of an ethanol oil out of ethanol machine, and then BHO right out of a BHO extractor. The BHO is just such a smoother and cleaner finish because it comes out fully refined and done. On both the ethanol extraction and the CO2 extraction, you need a lot of post-processing equipment to clean up that extract even after it's been extracted. So with CO2, the reason why you gotta winterize it and make it work in a vape cartridge is you gotta pull all the fats, waxes, and lipids out that get extracted with the CO2. Then you gotta winterize it by adding ethanol, freezing the fats and waxes, and filtering it through. BHO, it comes out all refined, finish, you know, a nice gold color right out of the system. So
as intake managers and bud tenders in the industry, the consumer comes to you for a lot of their knowledge that they get. There's not a lot of information out there, and you're probably the most comfortable representation of the cannabis product. In your personal preference and what you see at the dispensary level, what's the trend that you kind of see in terms of interest, and what do you typically prefer for yourselves?
especially at that dabbing counter, would you say who wins on the shelf space at your dispensary as far as that?
As far as like extraction method goes, or companies? Method definitely.
BHO for sure.
Absolutely.
So that's what a lot of people are going for.
Probably 95% of what's on our shelf and what I see most of the shelves is BHO right now in comparison to distillate.
And that's what the consumers, the customers are wanting and asking for?
Absolutely.
Yep, and that's why we stocked it.
Cool.
Get what they want. And what do you do specifically, Alan? What do you do at the dispensary? I am a concentrate intake manager, so the kind of product that we're using today is what I would be purchasing, putting onto the shelf. In the spare time I have, the very limited spare time, I will hop out and bud tend, but primarily doing the concentrate purchasing, getting that into the system, making sure we can sell it, it sells properly. We're not violating metric in any way. Keep OLCC happy.
Gotcha. And then what do you guys typically consume yourselves as a dabbing for?
BHOs. I like a lot of the, like I said, Dr. Jolly's is like one of the more affordable ones for me, so I'll go to that one. Like Echoes, I love those, and the Highlands as well, but that'll put a dent in all it. Then
BHO mainly.
I usually just do live resin, but the cheaper ones, like Hush and things like that, because I generally put it on top of my flower, my bowl.
Okay.
If I'm not dabbing, that's usually what I do, is put it on my flower. So.
Awesome. Guys, thanks again for coming out and joining us for this live taste test here. Everybody joining us today, we're going to jump into the test results, actually show you guys these test results on the screen here in a few minutes. But again, just wanted to thank Alan, Zach, and John from the CDC dispensary for joining us here today and participating in our live taste test.
And we'll be now doing the THC and vape cartridge taste test as well.
Tyler mentioned we put together some bonus footage here. As you can see on the screen, we've got a shelf cost for a distillate, shelf cost for a live resin cart, and shelf cost for a CO2 cart. So we put these guys to the test here, had them stick around and test some carts pre-purchased directly from the store. So we'll go into a little bit of detail, but also wanted to add this additional footage in here outside of what we prepared prior. So enjoy.
Thanks again for joining us, guys. We're here with this bonus footage. We wanted to get a blind taste test of distillate, CO2 vape pen, and then as well as BHO in a vape cartridge. So this is sample one, guys, if you want to take a test and tell us what you think. So how about this? How about flavor, smoothness?
I want to say floral, pretty smooth, not very harsh. I mean, tickles
tasty,
the nose for sure.
Okay.
Definitely tickles the nose. Got terpenes in it. Good terpenes in it.
Definitely smooth, terpene, nice, flavorful.
Uh-huh. And these guys use floral. Did you get a similar taste or?
Fruity to floral, probably right in between.
Okay.
Somewhere between a rose and a peony.
So, on the scale of vape cartridges, would you guys say this is a good cartridge? Or
I would
bad
definitely
cartridge?
say it's a good cartridge.
I would say good. Doesn't blow my mind.
Okay.
I'm going to say
Not
better
just-
than most, but I've had better.
Okay. Cool.
Still, I wouldn't kick it off with my battery though.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Let's switch to the next
cards.
sample.
That's not.
The white cap.
Go ahead. And make sure it has the stopper on the bottom, so I'll grab the wrong black one the next time.
Now this is the white cap vape cart, and it's sample number 2. So kick it off and tell us what you guys think.
Bubblegummy at first, but definitely flavorful. Not as much of the terpenes on that one. It's not affecting my nose as much. Doesn't make me want to sneeze.
Struggling, trying not to look at it. There we go.
I like this one even better. I think it's even more flavorful. That's funny. Softer than you.
Is it a similar flavor?
No, in fact, I'm not tasting any of the CO2. I don't think this would be a CO2. This is probably a distillate, which is a little weird to me that it would have better flavor.
Well, distillate, you guys got to think too that they're adding flavor.
They're adding terpenes back into it. Okay?
Yeah.
Taking that into consideration. That's
Take
yeah,
this battery
that's the reason.
Put it on that cartridge and see if it works for you.
But I like the second one. Even more better. So the first one was good, I thought. Too.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think, Alan?
Can't get a hit.
Yeah, it works fine.
I could have screwed mine on. Very terpy. Very smooth as well. I would say sweeter. I could see bubble gum. Definitely a little on the sweeter side for sure. For me.
Yeah, not as floral for sure.
My eyes are getting heavy after the exhale. Digging that.
So let's load number 3, sample number 3, but you guys can still talk a little bit about what
Yeah, I
you
really
thought
like that.
Yeah, I like this one. This is number 1 for me thus far.
thus far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's a tank. Still the rubber one on the bottom.
I think I already know what color this is. Just like this.
Yeah.
All right, now we're on to sample number 3.
Spicy.
For sure.
Yeah,
It's
definitely
spicy.
spicier flavor. Like oh man, it's hard to describe.
I'm getting CO2.
Yeah, I'm getting it's definitely CO2. A little spicy.
Yeah,
Spicy
peppery.
floral.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And
Spicy.
what makes you say CO2, out of
Just
curiosity?
because of that, the taste I'm used to smoking, like even, especially a real cartridge, that company, they tend to always taste the same to me, all their CO2s.
Okay.
That CO2 flavor I can taste in this,
Uh-huh.
which is,
Okay, that's good.
which I prefer CO2 over distillate because I'd rather have my full spectrum and all the stuff that's in it.
So even though you prefer CO2 over the
I don't
distillate,
actually prefer the taste,
uh-huh,
but I prefer it
For
because the high is a better high too.
okay.
Than a distillate high.
So that is good to know, and that's also, you know, what we're looking for the information to share here, that it's not always about that THC number and how high the THC is, but it's also the terpenes and the full spectrum, and then
the high that it gives.
Yeah, the high that it gives you, that effect that goes into the high. So there's a lot of time you could have a lower THC score but a higher terpene score, and you're going to feel the effects a lot more.
I feel with the CO2 oils, I get a better, longer high with that fuller spectrum. It starts out slower, picks up a little bit, and then takes off, where with like a distiller or something, it's more of an up and then a down, a quicker high that doesn't last, and I don't get the full body effects.
And then what about like a BHO cartridge or a live resin cartridge?
Yeah, they get the long-lasting effects with a flavor that's unmatched.
So that's
it's a little prolonged to me.
It's the longer high with the flavor.
Almost like the
So
terpenes
it's the
have
best.
effect on the high or something.
okay.
That's crazy.
Well,
If you had to guess, you know, which one was distillate, which one was CO2, and which one would be BHO, let's just go down the line. Alan, why don't you start?
First one was, I'm going to go BHO, second one distillate, this one CO2.
And what was your favorite of the three?
Favorite of the three, I believe it was going to be the middle one, the distillate. I like that one. I like the taste on it.
Cool.
So what were the three options? The second one I think was a distillate. The third one I think was a CO2 option.
and the first one was BHO.
BHO, yeah.
Yeah.
Same. So you guys are correct on that.
Yep.
The first one, you guys talked about that floral taste and that smooth flavor. It was because it was real terpenes, so it gave you more of that floral flavor, the cannabis flavor. You mentioned on the distillate one it being a little sweeter, and that's because they use that artificial blueberry flavor. So you're getting not the true plant flavor, but that little artificial terpenes in there too. And then you hit the nail on the head with the hammer on the CO2. And then I liked what you said, because I agree with all CO2 kind of having that same flavor and
The bass
taste.
flavor.
I couldn't have a CO2 and then tell you what strain that came from. I could tell you it was a CO2 part that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something to know. And it's because, you know, even though it's a full spectrum, the CO2 extraction process actually degrades some of the terpenes through that process, at how high of a pressure it's extracting that. And that's why you lose the uniqueness of the strain. And you're not able to separate and tell what strain was what, like you can with a BHO product.
You say the second one, the distillate, was a blueberry?
Yes.
With blueberry added or flavored terpenes in it?
Yep.
That's why I thought it tasted like bubblegum.
Yep.
What does this one bring up for you? Because I think you're doing number one again.
This
So
is
you're-
number one. This is the one I like the most out of them.
Okay,
I halfway through that, I changed the battery setting to a hotter setting, so I wanted to go back.
So you
to
went
the
back to the
I
BHO.
went back to the BHO, and I'm going to take a bigger rip.
But tell us why that was your favorite.
The flavor on that, and I definitely, as soon as I hit that one, I could feel the effects of it throughout my head and down to the body. Where the other
Terpenes.
ones, it had to have been. I'm assuming it was. I'm not sure if this one had a higher THC or not, but it definitely, I could feel the effects of it quicker than I could feel the effects of the other one.
Cool.
I'd be willing to bet that distillate probably had a higher THC. And
Yeah.
anything you do to increase that THC, you can only have 100% of anything. So if you're increasing THC, you have to lose something else to create that space.
But the point of this is to educate and, you know, the consumer, you know, right now, like a lot of the guys are like, oh, what's the highest THC score? But that won't necessarily get you the highest per se. You'll,
Especially if you're smoking a distillate, you're going to keep chasing the highest number because it's not going to get you high anymore.
Yeah.
We have so many customers that come in for that reason. They tell them, well, you need to switch to a CO2 or a live resin cartridge, and then maybe go back to it, to a distillate. once you give yourself a break. But other than that, you're gonna.
I take it personally.
Your high doesn't last long, and you're chasing it.
When a customer comes in and asks for the highest percentage cartridge that we have on our shelf, I take it personally to me to try and sell them on a live resin or something with a higher amount of terpenes and a better spectrum of high. And 9 times out of 10, if they took my advice on it, they're going to come back and come after that live resin or something with a higher terpene profile.
And
education.
so
Spectrum high.
you mentioned live resin and live resin cartridges. I would say they're kind of newer to the industry and market on vape cartridges as compared to like distillate or CO2 cartridges. But would you say that that's kind of starting to take over and the industry is leading towards that live resin?
I would say yes. You're getting a lot of people too. They'll do the blend, the distillate blend to do the live resin. A lot of people are getting on that. And as you educate them a little further too about the true live resin, we'll have a few of those in, but the true live resins, absolutely amazing. I love them.
So you bring up a good point there. There is that option of distillate combined with the sauce, which is the HTE, mixed with live resin. But you still need that live resin extraction process to get that flavor. So, cool. Well, so after we've talked, you've gone back to the BHO cartridge being your favorite. Are you still on the distillate?
I like the taste of it, but kind of like John said with the CO2, like you like the effects of the CO2 more, but did you say you
I like the taste of it was better, but I'd rather buy. I won't do it I won't buy this.
There you go. Like, I like the
taste
taste on the distillate, but I do like the effects more of the BHO,
better.
for sure.
So as a consumer, if you knew,
I
would not pick that
BHO if I
over.
was educated.
Yeah. And John, what about you? Of the three, what was your favorite cart?
Oh, my favorite's the BHO was the best tasting one.
Number one, sample one.
Yeah.
Yep.
For best tasting. But I don't know, I'd have to smoke on it and keep smoking to know if the high was any better, which is probably going to be the same as the CO2. I'm not sure. But yeah, I know distillate highs don't last me very long.
I would venture to say that the BHO has even a higher terpene content than the CO2, so that will have a higher, longer lasting high as well.
No, we can actually.
Yeah, that's definitely the one I would go
So we have the test results here. On the BHO, it was the blueberry strain, and it was 10.5% terpenes. And then the CO2 was 6.3% terpenes. And the distillate was
OCC violations.
The distillate was the added food grade terpene added.
they're not saying the percentage of terpenes. It's THC CBD. They have it, but it's
So I
like
think we have to kill some downtime here. I think we smoked them in order of the way I like the flavoring on them. So
the distillate's like
BHO
3% terpenes.
I like best. The distillate I like just because I don't know if it was the terpenes in there. I like that better than the
Yeah, so for the
CO2.
distillate, we had
And
added
CO2
up.
is
It's
my
about
favorite
3%
one. As far as the
terpenes on the
effects, I've
distillate.
probably gone 1, 3, then 2 as for effect wise.
Okay.
That is the food grade added terpenes also
That's just
as well,
fine.
not reintroduced.
Just taste for distillate.
No, this is
It's the reintroduced.
It's reintroduced cannabis terpenes.
cannabis derived.
Cool. That's good. That's even better.
And in terms of like what you guys stock at your dispensary, if someone looks at the concentrate section of your store, what do you think that pie is split up in terms of ethanol extraction versus hydrocarbon versus CO2?
Oh, I don't even think we have an ethanol.
It's 90
On there,
to
right?
9 to 1% if we even have an ethanol. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's one in there. that
So
might
90% hydrocarbon, 9% CO2.
RSO.
Yeah, and that probably was true through our dabs as well. Because, probably 99%.
So you guys have RSO dabs?
We do have RSO.
Not RSO dabables though.
Okay, there is a brand, there is a couple RSO demos out there.
I have seen that.
Right.
Now.
Yeah. With RSO, are you talking RSO as in extracted with alcohol solution or RSO done with the
Yeah, RSO is an alcohol
There
extract.
seems to be sort of people not knowing the difference between an RSO and a FICO and mislabeling them as such or something like that. But a lot of our RSO and our FICO all come in syringes, so it's whether they keep them or dab. I don't think I would say
A lot of people don't dab, and I have a lot of people say that they would never dab it too. I don't think I've ever tried it myself just because of feedback from other people telling me how terrible it tastes. But maybe I'll have to do one for science.
I've tried that with some RSO. It's not a tasty experience.
I've always had people coming to eat it, bake with it. So.
Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is the additional bonus footage. Appreciate you, Alan, Zach, and John from the CDC dispensary. Again, we appreciate you guys coming out and participating in our blind taste test. So
Appreciate you.
absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, awesome. So obviously, the samples that we saw were directly from CO2, ethanol, and a BHO extractor. So we wanted to show crude. We'll jump in here real quick, and I want to go over some test results so you guys can actually see on the screen what we found as example in the 3 sample types. So looking at everything that we had prepared and put together, I'll kick this off. So as far as the CO2 was concerned, our total cannabinoid count was 52.61%. And looking at the residual solvents, you guys saw everything passed, but we did have, which is typical on all of the solvents, we had about 139 of the acetone. And jumping into the total terpene count, we had a number of 3.86%. So this was the CO2 straight out of a CO2 extractor. Jumping into ethanol, again, we're looking at samples with a 67.84% cannabinoid count. The ethanol came a little bit wonky with some of the tests. We had higher examples of the methanol and also the ethanol acetate. So, but again, still passed. The LOQ is just too low to measure. So jumping into the total terpene count, we had 3.37% terpenes straight out of an ethanol extractor. So now on to the hydrocarbon, looking at the total cannabinoids, 83.32%. Again, same biomass that we ran with the ethanol, and we just came in at a higher percentage of what the IO was able to produce. Again, all of the solvent methods were all too low to calculate, but again, passed on everything. So jumping into the last, we had almost 10%, 9.23% total terpenes measured in our test result for the BHO extractor. So again, happy to, anybody emails me, I'm happy to send these test results out so you guys can see them for yourself, but we wanted to take some time to show that on the screen. So we're going to shift gears here a little bit, and I'm going to jump over to Jack, and we're just going to talk about the percentage of total concentrates based on solvent methods. So I'll let this here for Jack, and we'll kick things off.
I can, yeah. Hey, if you pull one of the videos, I'm going to go off video so we can see the full screen. This is a breakdown of concentrate sales from Colorado. It was through, I think, the full year of 2017. Just wanted to give you an overview of what actually is selling in the concentrates market. So you can see here, vape was 36%, Then we have wax, shatter, live resin, and caviar. Those all kind of fall into the category of the original products in that in the taste test video. And then the vape products, 36%, fall into the second category of our taste test. So you can see the split here, and then we went ahead and broke out all of the products, all of dabbable products. So that's wax, shatter, live resin, caviar. There are a few other smaller categories in there that some of them just didn't exist when this was done. And then also everyone has different terminology. So some of the dabbables you might not see on this list, but they fall into one of these categories. So this is just bringing up that 54% of all the concentrates sold in Colorado in 2017 could really only be made with BHO. We had the blind taste test using CO2 and ethanol dabbable products, but as you heard the Budtenders say, those don't really exist at a retail level. They're just, I mean, you can see by the reaction after they smoked the BHO product compared to the other two, it just doesn't really compare. And so you don't really get like a shatter. You can technically make a shatter with ethanol, but you might see it in 1 out of 50 dispensaries. And the same goes for wax. And then live resin can really only be made, live resin and caviar can only be made from BHO. So we wanted to bring this up. We're a BHO company, and choosing to go with CO2 or ethanol, we all know, as you can see in the video, that they make good vape products. BHO does also. It's a toss-up. We all like BHO better than ethanol and CO2 vape, but really they all make good vape products. But you're just removing yourself from a huge portion of the market, from potentially 54% of the concentrates that are on the market. You just can't make those with either CO2 or ethanol.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate you covering that. Looking at kind of how we're going to break this down a little bit, I want to go into, more examples of, kind of what we saw. Jack obviously covered the shelf space with regards to data, but, Kyler, just want to do a mic check and make sure you're with us. I know you were having some issues.
I'm here. You hear me?
Awesome. Yeah. And Jack, would you mind going back on camera? I think we'll be set. And Kyler, just be in the background as he's having a few audio issues with connectivity. But Kyler, I wanted to bring it back to the video and just ask you, kind of going back and looking at some of the comments around the distillate specifically and the added cannabis-derived terpenes. Can you just talk about what that really means and what reintroducing terpenes into a product to concentrate on really the vape side or the cart side of the marketplace with all three of these methods?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so with that distillate product, to get any sort of, one of the problems with distillate is you're stripping everything else but, the desired THC or CBD out of the product. You're stripping not only the minor cannabinoids, but the flavor as well. So to make a desirable vape cartridge, companies are adding, whether it's botanically derived terpenes or cannabis derived terpenes, they're adding that flavor back into the product. And now there was, a year ago, there's the vape scare with the vitamin E oil. And actually Oregon, and California, some states and markets actually banned the practices of that artificial flavoring and that adding in. So the distillate companies took a huge hit when that happened. And then they are actually, so to get cannabis derived terpenes, there's a lot of different methods, but one of the best, terpenes that we pull off as an extraction company is vacuum purge terpenes from the oven. So while we're pulling out the terpenes or all of the solvents from the product in the vacuum oven, we're able to collect 100% cannabis derived, crystal clear terpenes through that BHO process that actually we sell those terpenes to those distillate companies. So
You're creating another product from that ultimately with regards to, what BHO is producing in its,
but
purge.
for those distillate companies to produce that high quality product, they either have their own BHO equipment processing it to create that sauce to add the flavor, or they're purchasing it from other, processors, producers in the market.
Right. So, Kyle, let's talk about post-processing. So, we look at getting a product shelf ready. Obviously, these three main methods really cover, vape carts. And if we're looking at that as a whole, let's just take CO2, for example, first, and just kind of myth bust a little around what is true and the limitation needed in ethanol with regards to CO2. Can you just kind of explain that a little bit, go into a little bit more detail?
Yeah. So one of the, with CO2, ethanol, both have their, benefits and problems. One of the problems, I'll start off with ethanol. It is great, a high throughput, low quality product or crude that will be further refined to, like, say, a distillate or isolate product. But the problem with ethanol and capturing a high quality product is the terpenes, and the boiling point of ethanol is too close to the boiling points of terpenes, which are highly volatile. So once you've introduced that ethanol to the oil, to pull the ethanol.
I did. Sorry, guys, I think we lost your audio, Kyler, for a second.
Yeah, I can fill in for Kyler. So when in the production process for an ethanol concentrate, at some point you have to get the ethanol out of the oil. You have this big mixture of cannabis oil dissolved into your ethanol, and you have to boil the ethanol. Like Kyler was saying, the boiling point of ethanol is just so high. Relative to water, it's low, but relative to terpenes, it's high. And so when you boil the ethanol out, you inevitably lose a significant amount of the terpenes. So while it's possible ethanol does extract a full spectrum, once you get to a smokable product, you've necessarily had to get rid of that full spectrum. You've had to get rid of the terpenes. Ethanol is great at making full spectrum products for edibles or topicals or tinctures, but when you're talking about smokable products, it really just doesn't make sense. There's kind of a similar issue with CO2 oil, in that you saw in the last part of that video, we had a CO2 cartridge and a distillate cartridge. Well, the distillate, there's a good chance it came from a CO2 extractor, but when you make distillate from CO2 extract, you have to at some point dissolve that extract into ethanol, and then you're just back to the same original problem where you have to boil out the ethanol, and in that process you get rid of some terpenes. So really, both methods can extract full spectrum, but once you get to a smokable product, you have to be reintroducing terpenes, and there's a decent chance that those ended up coming from a BHO extractor in the first place. With BHO extraction, when we do a full spectrum extract, we basically take all the cannabinoids and all the terpenes that we want straight out of the plant, and we're able to do it in a way with the correct pressures and temperatures to leave most of the undesirable products like fats and waxes and chlorophylls in the plant. So we remove cannabinoids and terpenes as a full spectrum, and then in our post-processing process, which is just a vacuum purge, all we do is separate the butane and propane, and the extract, we're just left with a full spectrum pure extract.
Yep.
The boiling points of butane and propane are so low. Propane at atmosphere, I think, boils around minus 40-ish degrees, and butane is similarly very low temperature. So all the terpenes, you can boil those off, you can boil the solvents off, and all the terpenes remain.
Yeah, and boiling points is obviously such a good point, and obviously came out in the test results with what we were looking at. But also, if you're going for kind of a pure, maintaining the flower strain, this is really the best way to do it, rather than reintroducing terpenes from other areas. You're not necessarily sure where that came from, especially when a distillate company is maybe purchasing that from an extractor like Kyler. So all obviously good points when kind of getting to that finished product. So, Kyler, just a quick question: if you're back with us, I think we were having some issues there. So, obviously, talking about the diversity in product lines that can be achieved, we've covered that. Again, it's about 54% in a mature cannabis market that you're losing. With going with an ethanol or a CO2 extraction. The one thing we didn't really cover was, you saw those guys mention on the video, you saw them, you recognize it, you can pick it out. It kind of all tastes the same. We hear that a lot. So again, the information that we're covering today is going into a lot of the test results that we had with regards to that, but also the bonus footage around what would be kind of a stable cart. So able to kind of showcase. Jeff, would you mind muting? I think we're having some feedback on. Okay, I think that's better. So obviously, finishing things up and kind of getting to the point where we can kind of do a Q&A section and take some live questions with regards to the video. We've identified kind of a clear winner as hydrocarbon, and the reasons for that were maintaining a flower strain with little post-processing, shelf opportunity in dispensaries, safety with regards to C1D, and just overall final profitability. You guys saw that the BHO live resin cart commanded almost $34 in cost compared to the other carts. So not only can you produce it, but you have a higher margin on that finished product with an educated consumer. So Jack, I think we missed a little bit covering some safety stuff with regards to BHO. Did you just want to just cover that quickly and just talk about a couple points regarding that? Thanks. And you are muted, but I'll mute myself.
Yeah, that's not a problem. One of the biggest differences between the extraction methods is just the process parameters around how you extract and some of the risks associated with them. Everyone, or it's kind of common knowledge that BHO is the more dangerous extraction method, and that's not true. Each extraction method has its risks. With ethanol, you also have a flammable solvent. It's slightly less volatile than butane, but that's also the reason why ethanol is not a great product for full spectrum smokable products. And then with CO2 extraction, you have extremely high pressures, over 1,000 PSI, which has a significant number of risks. And BHO is somewhere in between, where we have medium range pressures. Usually we're pretty low, around 30 PSI or even below 0 PSI. We're in vacuum just because we're operating at very low temperatures to preserve terpenes. And then we have the volatility issue also. So everything is contained in a closed loop system. We're in a class 1 division 1 electrical environment. And really the difference in the end, all methods can be safe. It's about the safety measures that you are putting in place as a business operator.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jack. I appreciate you covering that. So Adam, can you hear us? Are you on camera? I think, we're going to jump to a Q&A section. We didn't have a ton of questions come in today, but that's typical for this kind of webinar. So we've got a few. We'll just kind of ask of, both Jack and myself. Adam, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Oh, yep, I was. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yep, we got you. Thanks,
All right.
Adam.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, we've got some great questions here. The first one I'm going to ask is, how are minor cannabinoids affected by the different solvent types? Does CO2, alcohol, and hydrocarbon have a different effect on the minor cannabinoids and their interaction with them? Jack, you're muted.
The extraction method definitely has an effect on minor cannabinoids. Like I was mentioning earlier, ethanol can do a great full spectrum extraction, and it's definitely including minor cannabinoids. That because it's a polar solvent, it does really well extracting those, but also because of the polarity, it extracts some things that you don't want. Just bringing this back home again, it's just because you're extracting so much, including the good things like all your minor cannabinoids, it's very hard to separate those later. CO2 can extract minor cannabinoids. It does it. Right. Joe's saying it's a harsh extraction method. And then BHO does the same. All methods are decent with minor cannabinoids. Ethanol is great. BHO is great also.
Great. The next question is on the topic of the vacuum purge terpenes through processing. Nicholas is wondering, could you reintroduce them back into the product and preserve the natural flavor of those terpenes?
Most definitely. I mean, that is the main way the original strain is getting into the actual vape pen or smokable product. There's no issues with that. But again, when either you're doing some sort of microwave distillation to your plant matter beforehand, which is a really, really expensive product or a really expensive process, and you're boiling terpenes that way, or you're going through a BHO process where you have the terpenes in the extract at the end, and in the vacuum purge, you remove some of them and recollect them and put them back in. But again,
can you guys hear me? Is my audio coming in okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I just wanted to put in a quick note on that. Is the purging process and the BHO with the vacuum ovens and the oil, that process is designed to pull as little terpenes out as possible. So the cold trap is designed to just catch any that might come out, but that can be adjusted depending on, what you're trying to do. If you turn the oven temperature up to, where traditional BHO you're purging at a, sub 100 degrees, but if you turn the oven up to like 150 to 180 degrees, you could actually pull and strip a lot more terpenes if you, with that intention of pulling them from that oil to reintroduce to a different oil. So, but with the process, because of BHO's, volatility, the majority of the terpenes do stay in the product.
Great. And then we have another question here from Zach. What part of the extraction method is different that determines the variations of carts and basically the different types of products that come out of the system? Basically, what makes some output products more stable than other output products, and what determines what they're going to be?
Yeah, so I could answer that. It has to do with, the consistency and how much solvent you leave in the product when you pour. So, like, say you wanted to make shatter, you would pour the oil onto a parchment, as thick as possible, and let the recover 99.9% of the solvent in the system. If you wanted to, say, make diamonds and like sauce and have the THCA actually crash out a solution, you would pour into a pressurized vessel and leave some solvent in there to allow that crash out to happen. Or if you wanted to have like a butter or batter consistency, you can whip the oil. So those textures and consistencies are really just how you pour the product and what your desired product you want it to be.
Okay, and then I have another question here, and we're running short on time, so I don't know how many more we'll be able to take.
This will be the last one, Adam, and then we'll let these folks go.
Okay, yeah, so they are just wondering, in terms of post-processing, how do you purge the solvent from the different product types? I know we've kind of touched on it, but they're wondering, how do you purge the CO2, or how do you purge the ethanol, and how's that different than how we purge hydrocarbon?
Yeah, so the CO2 is pretty much purged right out of the machine. The CO2, since it's a gas, goes just into the atmosphere. But then you further, like if you want to do any type of usable CO2 product, that needs further refinement. So you're going to need to add ethanol and winterize that product. And then you will need to use, say, a roto vape, and then probably the roto vape will recover 99% of the solvent, and then you would want to finish it in a vacuum oven. With ethanol extraction, you want to do either a falling film or a roto vape again. But to most people are using the falling film and the roto vape as a first step, and then finishing it off in a vacuum oven, similar to BHO.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And Kyler, I know you kind of cut out in the middle. We lost you for a good portion of what you're going to be talking about. Was there anything just before we let these folks go that you wanted to cover with regards? And I know you didn't catch everything, but if there's anything you wanted to mention prior to us jumping off, go ahead. Sounds like that's a no. All right, awesome. So again, thank you guys for joining us. Here today, we had a few questions that we didn't get answered, but we always do, and will reply to those and follow up with everyone via email. Just again, thank you for joining us for this Budtenders Taste Their Test Buds webinar. And it's always a pleasure to give you a look here under the hood at Luna Technologies. And of course, we hope you found the information here both informative and worthwhile. So, please stay tuned via Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. We'll be announcing more webinars to come. Actually, the next one I'm pretty excited about. We're going to be featuring one of our newest customers and going through, kind of start to finish what it takes to put together a lab and install one of our IO extractors. We'll feature some of their finished products, and stay tuned for more information on that as we kick off the next one. So until next time, from all of us here at Luna Technologies, be safe and take care. Later, everybody.